Yep.
Okay,
And
we're
the
up to
count-
19, so we're good.
Yeah, well, the count's going to be a little funky because we
Oh,
have
that's right.
a large number of fabulous presenters here. So I see that we subtract right now from the total one.
You need to subtract
Andrea,
Andrea. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Andrea, Alexis. I mean,
Linda.
we don't want to subtract you because you're fabulous, but we'll subtract. You need to total.
No one's being subtracted. They're just not part of the count. That's all.
It is merely a
They're an
mathematical
enhanced
phenomenon.
part, but just not part of that original count. That's all.
Yeah, let me pull it up this way. It's a lot easier.
We're glad you're here. Hey, Chase. Hey, Kyla. Hey, Cal. Folks had-
Hey.
Hello.
Jackie?
Hello.
I see 5 right now.
I'm here.
Okay.
And welcome, DERIK,
47.
new videographer. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. Welcome. How are you doing?
I am wonderful. How are you?
Doing well. Doing well. Blessed.
It's 5. 5. But we're well above that number anyway, right? So,
Yeah, we are.
Mm-hmm.
so we're good to
We
go.
are. We're at 28, so that's really good.
Yeah,
We're
we're
there?
We are
We have
there.
Okay, awesome. So I would like to call the Culture, Climate, and Behavior Committee 100 to order at 6:32 p.m. today, March 10th, and we'll ask Gail to please call the roll.
Dr. Ammons,
Present.
Miss Bishop,
Here.
Mr. Davis,
He's here.
Here. Here.
Dr.
Sorry.
Thank you. Dr. Starks Turner,
Here.
Miss Kraft,
Here.
Miss Francois Blue,
She's not here tonight.
Miss Gabadon, Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Miss Jones McLeod,
Present.
Miss Grimes,
Here.
Miss Corellis,
Here.
Miss Harris,
Here.
Miss McQueen. She is going to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Moore,
Here.
Dr. Pruitt Adams,
Here.
Mr. Martin,
Here.
Dr. Sanders,
Here.
Miss Dixon Spivey. Not yet. Miss Steffens,
Here.
Miss Thompson,
Here.
Mr. Waxler,
Present.
and Mr.
Present.
Henry. Thank you. Mr. Henry? Not yet. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Awesome. I would welcome do we have any comments, Gail?
No.
And I would welcome a motion to approve the minutes of February 10th.
So move.
Second.
Thank you.
Anyone opposed? I don't have to do a roll call, right?
Can't hear you, Gina.
Okay, sorry. Anyone opposed? Is there anyone opposed to the approval of the minutes? Hearing none? So be it. It's approved.
Thank you.
Is that better? Can you hear me, Gail?
Yes.
We're good?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So we have a lot of fabulous additional people with us tonight. And first of all, I want to say thank you to them in advance for being with us, because tonight we're going to be talking about the BEP. They will give us more information about that. But before we do that, we're going to do a circle. And before everyone got on the call, we were talking about tomorrow is the anniversary of 1 year of them sending us home. And saying that we were about to be, we didn't know what was going to happen, right? But it's been a year tomorrow. So I'm feeling like a lot has happened in this year, and yet our committee has still met. And we still have been providing input and doing the work of evaluating what's needed for our students. And I'm super grateful for that. But we have a large group tonight. So in an effort to make our circle, because, you know, all of you who just showed up just to present, you're still going to be part of the circle because you're here. You just have, it's just what it is. Thank you and welcome to the circle. What I'd like to do is, so we could keep it brief and make sure we get through it and get to the important information and be able to provide the feedback that our committee can provide. The question that I want to ask on the circle is, what's one thing, and you have to make it less than a sentence, so like it's short. What's one thing that you've learned about what's important for District 200 in this time of the pandemic, in this year? And I'll start us out. The one thing I've learned in the 1 year anniversary of this pandemic for D200 is the importance of connection. And I'm actually going to call on everyone because we have a long list. So I'm going to go down the names that I have here. So I'm going to start actually with Hugo because you're first on the list there as the Zoom host.
I'm going to say I learned to be patient.
Thank you. DERIK?
I have learned how to also be patient, but to prepare something before these doors open, so that I am not in a frenzy trying to figure out the next step to provide for my family.
Awesome. Thank you so much, DERIK. Joylyn?
Oh, man. I have learned, it's a couple of things, but you said I had to keep it down to a couple of words. Hope. And that hope is that all of our kids get the social emotional support that they need and the academic support. So I'll say hope.
Thank you, Joylyn. Gail?
I would say scope and hope as well.
Greg?
Flexibility, adaptability, without a doubt.
Karen?
So similar to yours, connection, community, and the power of community, because all this is so distant, but the power of whatever is possible for community.
Thank you. Alexis?
I have learned to definitely remain flexible and continue to learn and adapt what we have to do to meet needs.
Thank you. Andrea?
We could barely hear you.
Me? You can barely hear me?
Yeah, you sounded like really, really.
You see how close my face is to the camera right now? I don't
No, but
understand.
you were so soft.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. Is it Andrea or Andrea?
Andrea. And I would say I've learned the importance of relationships and to make sure that you always continue to build strong relationships, even when you can't see people face to face.
Thank you. Calvin?
I have learned that as a people, being all of us in this together, we all need to be more reasonable and think more reasonable, because no one's right and no one's wrong.
Thank you, Calvin. I lost my space. Oh, Chase.
I would say the importance of community.
Thank you. Sherilyn.
I would say compassion and acknowledging how fleeting life is, and to live every moment as if it was your last.
Thank you. David.
I would say collaboration and community.
Jackie.
I would say thriving amidst chaos.
Bar.
I would say patience and extending grace to one another as we navigate this process.
Roxana.
I learned the truth of the old saying, never say never. Because there's some things that, I never thought that I would become an expert on saliva, for example. But there are so many things that have never been approached, but that we had to tackle and continue to do so.
Thank you. Alicia.
Grace and understanding.
Francis.
Gina, can you repeat? My internet went out.
Yeah, no, the question is, so for, what have you learned in this year that you think that, what have you learned in this past year that D200, that's important for D200? And you have to keep it short and brief.
Yep, okay. Trusting relationships.
Thank you. Ginger.
Hi, I would say creativity in finding new ways to connect and still have fun together.
Thank you. Greg.
I would be thrilled to go twice, but once is enough. I'm good.
Oh, you went. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry, because names are moving on the list. So
yeah, no worries. No worries.
Getting confused. Janelle, did you go already? No.
I did not go. I would say valuing life, people, and relationships.
Thank you. Kristen.
I would say keeping what's important in the front.
Thank you. Kyla.
The importance of being honest with ourselves and with each other.
Thank you. Lincoln.
I'd say the importance of listening with empathy and acting with compassion.
Linda.
Pandemics are the great unknown. Ask for any change that you want at these times.
Melanie. Melanie, are you muted? Okay, we're not hearing you. Oh, wait. No. I'm going to come back to you. Nabiha? Okay, tell me if I'm saying it correctly.
That's perfect. Just the value of being really innovative in efforts to try to meet students right now.
Thank you. Nisa.
I would just say adaptability.
Quincy.
I would say just making sure to live in the moment and like not take things for granted, like you never know how quickly something can change.
Thank you. Susan?
Strength and resilience of our community.
And coming back around to you, Melanie. And I see that you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Okay, Melanie, maybe try logging out and log back in. Because we definitely do not want to miss your voice. Did I miss anyone? I think I went down the list. I think I did that well. Okay. All of those things that you all said have everything to do with the behavior education plan that we're going to hear about tonight. I just am like all of those words: understanding, patience.
Okay.
Oh, there you are. Yes, Melanie, go ahead.
Hear me? Okay, awesome. Yes. I'm so sorry. I was just over here talking. I turned my screen off. I completely agree with Linda. I said what I did or what Linda said.
Yes. Can you say it in your own words though, Melanie? It's the teacher in me.
Oh, sure. You don't ask, you don't get.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So like I said, everything that you just heard is exactly what. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Pruitt-Adams so she can get us started with this process of information that we're about to get. I'm very excited to hear what's in this plan and the changes that have come up. So Dr. Pruitt-Adams?
And I'm not going to say much except that one of the roles of CCB, which has transformed from being PTAC, the Parent Teacher Advisory Committee, one of the primary roles is to annually review the district's code of conduct, which for now, for us, is the behavior education plan. And so I'm going to turn it over to Greg and his team. The reason this is done today is so that the team can get feedback and we can take it to the board for approval at the April Board of Education meeting. Greg?
Yes, thank you. So I want to kind of reset a little bit our approach to this evening because let's go back actually a good, well, probably 11 months and take a look at where we were at that point. It was at that sometime back in, I think it was March, but it might have been April. We brought the BEP to this crew for its first round of feedback. And as we were talking about in our planning meetings for this meeting just a little while ago, you know, the BEP was there. The feedback that we got was clear. Good. We're glad we're shifting towards the BEP. But what we really need is a responsive system that is going to be positively focused on responding to our students' needs. And we didn't see that kind of baked into the BEP that we really wanted it to be last year. That was the undergirding, overriding concern that came out a year ago. And it spoke to something that we have been working on as a school district, honestly, going back at least 2 years. If not more, to develop a true multi-tiered systems of support around social and emotional behavioral needs for our students that is truly responsive, research-based, and is going to serve our students' needs in flexible ways along the lines of much of the themes that we heard when we went around the circle just a little while ago. So I'm going to turn this over to our team in a little bit to explain how they have designed this MTSS model as a necessary but incredibly important component of how we are going to work with our BEP plan moving forward. One reminder that I'll throw on as well, though, and not that we need this reminder, but it's, I think, just good to point out, too, that this BEP that we did a year ago was fabulous. It was cool. We wanted to roll it out. And now we've been remote for an entire year, and we've never been able to roll it out really with our kids. And so as far as adjusting what we had a year ago, well, we don't have any data, right, to see kind of how this played out. But we knew we needed this support system anyway. So I would be remiss if I didn't do a few things. First, I'm not going to name everybody right now in person. Linda Parker has put together a team that has just absolutely grabbed this project by the horns and done just exceptional work. So I want to thank you all for the work you've done. Without being in person, I'm not popping into your meetings and seeing you all in the halls and all that. So I am deeply appreciative of the work that you have done. So with that introduction, and I hope everybody else feels the same way as we go through this, no pressure. Let's roll on and see where we are. So Linda, I'll turn it over to you, okay?
Good evening, everyone. And we do have a presentation that we're going to show as we go through this that you had received in email. So as Dr. Pruitt-Adams even mentioned, we're really looking for feedback and any questions or comments that you may have as we go through this. We are going to show you tonight how our systems work together in order to serve our students in the best manner possible. You know, as has been mentioned in terms of our behavior education plan, how that is supposed to be a restorative approach to working with students around discipline. Well, one of the comments and concerns that did come out of the conversation from last year was about how do we support our students so that perhaps discipline is not the route that even gets the path that students end up on. And so this multi-tiered system of support that you're going to see today is addressing how we're going to enhance our interventions so that we can make sure that we are supporting our students in a social, emotional, and behavior development way and making sure that they have everything they need for every step of their development through their 4 years of high school. So I want to thank my team again for the time that they're sharing this evening in order to present this, and we'll get started on the slides. So just to give you an overview of what we were charged with, you can just go to the next slide. So what is MTSS? We are looking to provide targeted social, emotional, behavioral, and evidence-based interventions for students. And the most important thing that you should know about the way our team approached this, we always wanted to make sure race was part of the discussion. So you are going to hear that tonight, you're going to see it. And what's most important is that we want to make sure that students are always looked at holistically as to who they are as they are brought to these tables. We want to be responsive in the appropriate manner for students' racial identity, as well as how they are presenting in our school. So it's important to us that we used research to do this. It's important to us that we were evidence-based and that this is not just based on feelings and having nice conversations with students. We needed to break down the silos within our schools so that we understood we were working towards a cohesive school-wide model and not one-offs where you can go for groups for certain things but not for other things. We were very keen on employing a universal proactive screener to help us to identify students beyond a tier 1 level. Keep in mind that as we have been in a pandemic year, I've been very clear with all of my student service division individuals that the students are presenting very tier 2 now just because of everything we've been in. We don't want to confuse that with true need for tier 2 intervention versus tier 1 strategies that could be given to all and to help. We want to be data driven and making sure that we have goals that are driving the supports we're providing and the delivery of that support. And then most important, we're selecting scientifically validated programs and practices to include progress monitoring. So there is to be an outcome to what we're doing. Students aren't just going to sit in and be involved in some, again, a nice discussion and then be on their way. We're going to make sure that students are monitored throughout and that they're achieving the goals that have been set. And if they don't achieve them through primary measures, we're going to have stages for all that we are going to support. As we go through this presentation, you're going to hear different voices from my team as we go forward. Next slide.
Can I just make an interruption right now? I sent Hugo and DERIK an email. Can you acknowledge that, please?
Yes, I sent them the.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Alexis Iliadi. I'm the MTSS coordinator. As Linda was just saying, one of the most important things that we think about when we think of any multi-tiered system of support is understanding how equity and MTSS go hand in hand. So on this slide, what you're really seeing is our definition of MTSS and also our definition of equity, which is leading us to an equity-based MTSS model. And the big takeaways there is we're looking at one system with tiered support that is informed by data, designed for success, and has acknowledged voice. And that is something that we've really kept at the forefront of all of this work that we've been putting in. And if you can go to the next slide. On this slide, you're going to see some of the research that we pulled in and plugged here. And there's a lot out there. I will just highlight the one statement saying equity-based MTSS implemented with fidelity is positively correlated with educational equity. And that's really at the forefront of all this work. This is the most important takeaway as we've been developing this plan. And we can go to the next slide.
Good evening, everyone. So I am Cheryl McLeod. I'm on this committee, so you all know me, but I am the new trauma-informed school interventionist. And so as we begin working together, trauma-informed care as well as MTSS, we know that MTSS is baked into the heart of trauma-informed work in the building. And so we want to make sure that our trauma-informed care is addressing our tier 1 universal whole school interventions, making sure that every single student who comes into the building feels supported and safe in all areas of the building. And so when we're thinking about whole school, universal tier 1, we are thinking of coming from the front door, through the hallways, classrooms, cafeterias, every field, and throughout the community. So we want to make sure that we are supporting our students holistically, backing it up with training and support financially, and evaluating what we're doing and making sure that those things are working. We have organizational commitment from our administrators. We are creating plans to implement lots of staff training, not just for teachers, not just for TAs and such, but also campus safety, cafeteria staff. Any person on our campus and in our community should be trained on how to interact with our students and make sure that they are not re-traumatizing our students in their interactions with them. Amplifying the voices of our families and students and community, and making sure that they are heard when we are making decisions and planning these trainings and implementing new things. We want to make sure that we have their voices embedded in what we're doing. Ensuring that our policies, like our behavioral educational plan and other policies that we develop throughout the building, are trauma informed, and aligning them to ensure that we're all speaking the same language. And then using our data that we collect throughout the year to help us evaluate what we're doing, make shifts, U-turns, whatever we need to do, but to make sure that we are doing what's right for our students and our families. Next slide.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Ginger Colamusi. I am our Prevention and Wellness Coordinator, and I'm going to start us off talking about our MTSS SEB Tier 1. So keeping in mind our very large and diverse OPRF school community, we believe it's critical to have a robust school-wide SEL plan, right? That Tier 1 universal level to support the social, emotional, and behavioral development of all of our students, but particularly our students of color who have historically felt marginalized and disconnected within our school. So our Tier 1 plan includes multiple types of instruction and supports that you see here that are all geared towards increasing school connectedness, belonging, opportunities for meaningful and culturally affirming participation, and core SEL skill development, again, for all students, but including our most marginalized. And these various types of instructions and supports do not and should not need to be sought out by our students themselves, but rather we want them to be embedded, as Sherilyn just described, into our students' daily routines, their daily experiences throughout their school day and throughout our school building, such as within their academic classes, advisory space, the hallways, the cafeteria, all that was just named that makes up our school day. Next slide, please. So we have identified 3 SEL competencies listed on the bottom here to guide the development of our Tier 1 universal plan. And those are self-awareness and self-management skills, relationship skills, and decision-making skills. And as you can see on this slide, we identified those 3 areas by merging CASEL's core competencies and ISB's social emotional learning standards. So it's our goal that all of our students will develop these skills through our Tier 1 universal programming. Next slide. All right, so now we have a little bit of data to show you. So while we know that there are many ways that OPRF already supports our students' wellness, mental health, a positive school climate, we also know that there are still areas where we can grow and improve the supports that we provide to all students. So we just have a few slides for you here that highlight some of the data from our most recent Illinois Youth Survey. We actually took this, I want to say, a week, 2 weeks before the shutdown last year. So it was March of 2020. And as we look at this data, again, just briefly together, you all have it to look at more if you'd like. I believe we can only assume that most of these numbers have increased since our pandemic experience. So keep that in mind as we look at this. But this first slide is mental, social, and physical health. And it speaks to students who have identified feeling sad or hopeless for a significant length of time. And you can see that those numbers are about a third or even more than a third of our students. Let's go to the next slide. The next several slides are all under school climate and school connectedness. So our students are answering if they feel close to people at school. The numbers you see here are students who disagree with this statement, so who do not feel close to people at our school. Again, we're right around that third of our students. Next slide. Still under school climate and school connectedness, this question is about being happy to be at this school. Again, these are students who disagreed, so they do not feel happy to be at this school. These numbers are even more elevated. We're really approaching nearly half of our students saying they disagree or that they do not feel happy to be at this school. Next slide. Again, still under school climate, school connectedness, this time about safety. So students, again, who disagree. And so this is representing students who do not feel safe at our school. So again, hovering right around that third of our student body. And then next slide, I think this is our last piece of data for you to see. This is under school climate, but a different category under meaningful participation. So this is asking students if they feel there's different ways their voices are heard, and if they, in this one, can help decide things like class activities or rules. These are, again, students who answered negatively so that they feel that is not true for them. And so this is obviously quite a significant number. 2/3 of our students say they disagree or it's not true. They do not get to use their voice, have their voice heard to decide things in their daily experiences at school. So I know we went through those quickly. I think some of this is maybe not surprising, but still shocking or still hard to hear because we know these are not small numbers of our students, right? For each question, it's over a third, sometimes nearly a half. Nearly half. This one is 2/3 of our students that are indicating to us that more support is needed in these areas. And of course, we're highlighting these ones that are highlighting need. There were many, many other questions where our students were answering very positively about the supports and climate at our school. So again, we want to keep in mind that balance, that we know a lot of things are working and that these are some of the areas where we can grow and improve. But I think all of this data together really just points to, again, the need for that robust Tier 1 universal level of supports for our students, in addition to those Tier 2 and Tier 3 levels that are going to be for our students who have greater needs. So I'm going to turn it over now to Nabiha, who's going to really walk through that outline of what our Tier 1 plan includes.
Thanks, Ginger. My name is Nabiha Kalkadawala, and I'm one of the PSS social workers. I'm going to take us through the next few slides talking about what the Tier 1 plan looks like. So obviously that data is pretty compelling for us to think about what we want to do about it. You know, what are we going to do here? Linda mentioned at the beginning of this presentation that so many of our students now who we would consider Tier 2 students are appearing in distress. And so we are thinking now about this Tier 1 plan designed with the end in mind. If we're thinking about students kind of going through high school, whether or not they're sort of experiencing long-term impact, psychological impact from this pandemic, what skills do we think that an OPRF graduate should possess in order to be a successful contributing member of society? So we're looking at, we're going to be looking at those competencies, those ISB SEL standards as really our goalposts with what we want our students to have as they move through our halls. So if you see here on slide 14, we are using CASEL's school implementation guide as the basis for our rollout. CASEL has identified a number of key indicators, which you see on that left-hand side there for the next few slides. For each of the indicators at the Tier 1 level, we've identified as a team how we'll hope to address this as a part of our overall universal plan. So this plan is really designed to help teachers continue to infuse SEL. We know that so many of our teachers are doing such incredible work in the classroom, and we just want to really continue to support that. Notably, community building, connectedness, sense of belonging in the classroom, into all aspects of the classroom, including academic content and that advisory space. We know a lot of that work can happen in advisory as well. This plan will also increase opportunities for student voice as a way to build buy-in and follow through. We know that if students are sort of asked, you know, what is your sense of what do you value? What do you think is important to you as a student community? That's really going to help our student population feel more connected to the school and also to a common language that we would all use. Next slide, please. Here we have indicators of school-wide SEL at the school level. So you see two of the indicators, supportive school and classroom climates, and then a focus on adult SEL. And if you look there in the blue, Umoja is a crucial part of our professional development plan and our implementation plan. Teachers will be encouraged to use these proactive restorative practices that you see there, including community building skills and classroom norms. For those of you who don't already know, we had the opportunity to engage in a pretty robust PD in mid-February, where we had the opportunity to sort of observe or witness a community building circle, talk briefly about the collaborative norms building process, just a really powerful experience for all of us. And I think the feedback we got was overwhelmingly positive about, okay, I could see myself doing this in my classroom spaces. Next slide, please. And finally, we will continue to intentionally approach behavior from a positive or from a strengths-based. Through both our attendance and behavior education interventions, we seek to be asset-focused rather than deficit-based or punitive in nature. So you see the interventions there that are ongoing. We mentioned briefly at the beginning of this that we don't have a lot of data around the discipline because of this unique year, but we look forward to continue to support those practices moving forward. I'm going to pass it over now to Alexis and Andrea for Tier 2.
All right, we can keep going on to the next slide. All right, so here is everyone's favorite triangle again, and we're going to kind of shift gears and start talking about Tier 2. And really, I just want to emphasize at this point, we're talking about the students who need more. Like, we are providing this incredible universal core with the hopes of meeting the needs of every student, knowing that we're not going to meet the needs of every student. So as we're talking about Tier 2, we're really focusing on students who we're identifying through data that need more support. And that's what you're going to hear about in the next few slides. So we're looking at about 10 to 25% of our students who are going to need this level of support. You can go on to the next slide.
Hi everyone, I'm Andrea Newman. I'm one of the deans at the high school. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're going to identify students for Tier 2 intervention. So we really want to use a system that's going to ensure all students are accessing the supports if they need it, not just students that understand how to use the system with parents that understand how to use the system, but students, when they need intervention, they're going to be provided the intervention. So we plan to use a targeted screener to screen students to determine if there's a need for Tier 2 interventions. And so we would be screening students that would be identified through our early warning system data, which identifies students based on grades, attendance, and discipline, through teacher nomination, and then through our pupil support service teams. Because they work so closely with students, they may be able to identify a need that we would not find in the other two options for identifying students. We're hoping that this will be the entry point for students who would need Tier 2 interventions. The data screener, we'll use the data from the targeted screener to determine if the Tier 2 level interventions are needed. And then once we determine that there's a need, the PSS teams will determine what interventions will be provided and formulate an intervention plan. Again, we really are hoping that this step will provide interventions in an equitable way for students so that all students who have a specific need, their needs are being met. It's not just we hope we catch you, this parent knows how to access the system. Okay, next slide.
All right, so as Andrea was just saying, we're really looking at our process for intervention implementation here. So once we have identified a student for the targeted screener in one of those 3 entry points that Andrea just talked about, whether that's our early warning system data, a PSS referral or a teacher nomination, our social workers will be providing a targeted screener that's going to help us gather more data to help us match students with the appropriate intervention. So to really try to hone in on what is the specific need for the student, at which point our PSS teams will then work to use that entry data, what brought the kid to us, and then also that screening data to help us really make sure that we're matching them with the appropriate intervention before we then begin our intervention implementation. And if you go on to the next slide, this is where we've really tried to outline our tier 2 interventions and what this will look like. And we differentiate these between 2 areas. So we're really trying to focus on students who, is it a can't do problem or a won't do? Does the student have the skills and they're not demonstrating the behavior? Or do we need to teach the skill? And that's where you'll see on the top of this chart here, we have acquisition-based and performance-based. And these are the 2 areas of intervention that we're really looking at. And then we break those down further. So when we're thinking about students with acquisition-based needs, students who we need to teach skills related to emotional regulation or behavioral regulation, we're looking at having different social and emotional skill building groups to help teach the skills that the student needs. And the chart kind of breaks down the different areas that we're looking at here. We have been working as a team to really make sure that we are doing a lot of vetting in all of our intervention processes to make sure that we're using evidence-based interventions that have also been utilized with similar populations of our students. So really also keeping race in that conversation as we're doing intervention selection to make sure that we're using programs that work with, that have worked with similar populations of students as to Oak Park. On the right side of the chart, you'll see the performance-based interventions. And this is really looking at interventions for students who might have the skill, but they're not performing it. So whether that be related to an avoidance of academic work, they're seeking adult attention, they're maybe not having enough opportunities to interact with their peers, demonstrating some off-task behavior, or maybe they need some positive behavior reinforcement. And again, we've been doing a lot of vetting in terms of our intervention selection here to make sure that we're using evidence-based practices in all of our intervention. So once we have identified students for a tier 2 intervention, this is where the PSS teams will really be using all of the data we're bringing to the table to make sure that we are matching students with the appropriate intervention for their need. And we can go on to the next slide.
And the next slide takes us into the final tier, which is tier 3, a more intensive, individualized support need. And this is to represent a very small contingent within the school. Keep in mind that once a student has gone through tier 2 interventions with fidelity, but they still continue to demonstrate a need for more individualized support, you'll start to see those things that you see listed there come into play for this student. Again, when we think about population-wise, we're talking about perhaps 3 to 5% of our students, and recognizing that there is going to be some discovery of some possible intense trauma for students, work that needs to be enhanced for them, and skills that really need to be assisted on a more individual basis. And that's where you see us move into tier 3. There could also be discussion at this level of child find, but that is not always the case. Next slide.
All right, and this is probably, I would say, one of our most important slides, right? As we're doing all of this work, one of the most important things we need to do is make sure that we're measuring progress and success. And so this is just breaking down what that looks like. So as a student enters intervention, we're really going to be using that entry data as our baseline data from the screener and from our EWS data. We will then be doing intervention progress monitoring using curriculum-based measurements specific to the intervention that they are receiving. And our identified screener has a progress monitoring tool to help us monitor their progress in the area that we have identified as an area of need. We'll also be doing intervention fidelity checks. We know that our interventions are only good if we are implementing them with fidelity. And then We need to review our data as students are nearing the end of intervention and determine at this point, are we looking to exit a student from intervention, or are we recommending further intervention at this time? Next slide.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kristen McKee, the Coordinator of Learning Analytics and Supports. Some of you might have seen a version of this slide in other board meetings. This is our sort of our logic model of how we are going to implement the plan, what we expect from the plan, and then sort of the checks and balances that we're going to find. So what we have here is the overall school improvement strategy. And I think the important thing is everything you're hearing about is integrated under the MTSS umbrella. And that's been really important to this team. While we might have had some good pockets of practices going on in the building, they were never under the same system. And as Andrea talked about, that meant that it was up to families and students to navigate that, and it really wasn't equitable. So what this attempts to do is bring this all together. It provides us understanding what do we need, the inputs, what do we need to put this plan in place? What are the professional practices that we expect out of the adults? What is the evidence that we're going to expect to see? As Alexa said, it really is one of the more overlooked parts. People get a good plan in place, they might initiate it, but then progress monitoring and doing those fidelity checks, are we implementing as we said we're going to implement? So how are we going to do that? And I truly expect that this will evolve along the way. This is something for us to look at and to think about what we think is going to happen. I by no means think this is a final draft. I really think we are going to grow and learn. We're going to get professional development ourselves on how to implement this, learn from other people. But I think right now what we wanted to do is make sure that we had an idea of how do we, from the get-go, know that what we're doing is happening, or what we want to happen is happening. Next slide. And this final part of the logic model involves student learning outcomes. And you've probably, again, seen this before in other areas, but here are all the areas that we want to see success in. Benchmarks of success is what are the data that we are going to be looking at, and how are we going to be looking at what do we want to see from that data. And again, I want to bring up, I really do believe there's going to be additional data points, and there's going to be additional ways of measuring this. I think right now it's hard to really know what that looks like without being in it. But we do know that what we want to do is see that our attendance rates are improving, our grades, especially in core subject areas that are predictive of on-track behavior or on-track graduation, that those are doing well and that our infraction rate is declining. And then also through the surveys that we are mandated, and also the ones that we're going to develop, we really want to see those strong benchmarks happening. We want to see those numbers, just like Ginger had talked about, we want to see those going up. And for us, what we want to see is at least 80% of our population reporting these strong feelings. And then also really, how do we know that we are finding the right students? And that will have to be developed, but really that's important to us as well. And all of this is for our desired long-term outcome, which is these three hallmarks over here, which are, positive, equitable, healthy school community and classrooms conducive to learning. These strong SEL competencies that we believe that students, when they walk out our door, need to have for life. And then also that students of all racial backgrounds experience connectedness and get the support that they need to feel good about their school.
And next slide. We are at the end of our presentation, and we are pretty much ready to start to roll this out. One of the things we want to make sure that you've heard and that we're stressing is that this is all about the types of students who we want to have matriculate from Oak Park River Forest High School, and the skills that we as educators have spent the time and effort to build within them so that they are the most productive citizens of our growing and changing society. So if we say we're within education, then our job is to teach them what we think that they need to know. And that is what this whole plan is based on, teaching students what they need to know instead of just expecting them to already have that information. So all of this fits within our restorative plan, and our hope too is that when we see the data going forward, we'll see how it's working in tandem with our BEP going forward. So with that, we'd like to open it up for any questions, comments, or feedback.
Thank you all so much. I'm just going to make one comment really quickly before I turn it over, because we really want to hear from the rest of the folks. We might want to take the presentation down so we can see everybody, but I just want to say thank you, because this is the report I've been waiting for. This is you included a lot of pieces that I was like been asking for. So I just want to say that, and then I'm opening it up to the rest of the group, because I want to hear from, this is why we have this awesome committee, is because so many different perspectives and viewpoints. So please, just feel free to just unmute yourself and chime in if you have a question or comment.
I have a question, Gina. Oh, sorry. First of all, yes, I'm really excited about this plan. Thank you all for all the hard work. My initial question is more around teachers, and I like all of the steps that I hear about the support for students, and that Umoja is coming in and teaching about community building circles and things like that. But how do you plan to get teachers really excited about learning how to change the culture in their classroom? So it's there's a lot of focus on how the adults are in the school. So how will you, if it's optional and it's not required, how do we get a lot of teachers on board so students aren't maybe just harmed in some classrooms and not in all classrooms?
Very good question, and thank you for that. And I'm so glad that Greg is in the room hearing that question, because that's what formatted that whole my experience. That's why I started with the remark I made. We're in a pandemic and all of this is new. To me, you can ask for anything now because everything is up in the air and trying to be determined. So I do believe that there has to be some allotment for creativity within your classroom about how things get implemented. But I do need there to be like a baseline. We're going to give this a try. And as you heard in the BHA report, we had in February a professional development led by Umoja that really seemed to resonate with quite a few of our faculty and staff, where they were in a space and place where they could see how they could do it, because it was a teach me how versus a let's just talk about it, see something in action and move forward and try to recreate it. They were actually taught how to do it in their own spaces. And that gives that confidence, that level of confidence that when you say we need to see this tried and implemented, that builds up a little bit more courage to making that happen. Because most of the times things don't go that far because I'm just too afraid, got a lot to do, I don't need to change things up, things are fine in my space. But this gives that courage to say, I could do that. And that was, very, very cool. And it was done in a virtual setting, which allowed teachers to see how to do it in a space such as what we're in right now. So,
yeah.
But.
And I want to add to that just one piece, and that, this really doesn't work for the long haul if this isn't the expectation. If this isn't how we are supposed to function as a school. And by expectation, I mean, yes, it is incredibly important with any initiative that we work to grow people in their understandings of the why and their ability to apply the how. So there is growth. There's a learning focus to all of this for the adults and the kids. But if this is who we are as a school, this simply has to be the expectation. And so one of the things that I've really appreciated about how Linda and her team have begun to vet this idea is the conversations that they have had, not just only with one another, but going out to various teams in the school, even already to actually, and I mean, it's been a few weeks now as they were, beginning to really package this thing up, getting feedback from counselors and going to our division heads and going out to other folks to make sure that as we are in the initial stages of taking these steps, we're getting it out there, integrated into the organization, so that those expectations are being laid systemically from the get-go. So that's a big part of it. So
I heard from teachers who attended that, from several teachers, that they loved it, they loved it. And so if you can keep building on that excitement, keep it going, and also train students in how to lead circles so that it's not just one way. But thank you. I'm so grateful for all of this work. It's really exciting. Thank you.
I also just say one thing, Sherilyn, adding her is huge. I just want to say thank you to this team for what they did to get her on our team. Because, you know, meeting with her the other day with Alexis and I were brainstorming about like, what does MTSS mean for her? And her ideas of like, when she said walking, like, honestly, it feels like from her, it's like almost crossing onto Scoville and then like walking down the sidewalk in the building, like how she believes her work permeates the entire school. And she was talking about the lunchroom. She was talking about security. She was talking about everything. So I think sometimes we say teachers, and I just want to really broaden that to the adults. I mean, I could expand it to the Board of Education. Like, you know what I mean? Like anybody who interacts with our school really should understand what these school values and norms are, the work Sherilyn is doing to all those things that she talked about. So I really want to just completely broaden that perspective as well. But also thank you for letting her be a part of our team.
Which is also why we felt it important. The whole school participated in that PD. It was quite amazing, and yet it still felt small school. It was pretty cool.
I think I want to, I'm sorry, Sherilyn, go ahead, because I was just going to comment about you. Go ahead.
First of all, thank you so much. And just to piggyback on what was said already, we already have some glows. We were fortunate enough to be introduced and apply for a fellowship through the University of Chicago for the Trauma Responsive Educational Program. And we were accepted. Woohoo! We just found out like yesterday. So it's not public knowledge yet, but it is comprised of a team of 6, which includes 3 teachers from varying spaces throughout the building so that we could have teacher buy-in. They will be a part of helping us create a strategic plan to roll out trauma-informed care throughout the building for 2021-22 school year.
I would like to just add that watching this unfold over the last couple of years is how initiatives should be done. When you just throw them out there, they don't catch on, but it has been building momentum with a small group of people being trained and a larger group of people being trained, and now to the whole school. And I will tell you, it was invigorating. And from the feedback that I got from the group I was in was that they really, really enjoyed just the openness and the freedom of the space that a circle can give you.
Circle, look at that. Okay, so I just wanted to just throw this in here really quick. First of all, Kristen, thank you for mentioning about the adults. And for it to not just be teacher specific, like the teachers are a huge part of what happens in our buildings, but every additional person at NEA, we refer to everyone else as education support professionals. Every single other person in that building is an educator to our students and has an important role in what gets done. And if we miss anyone as we're doing this systemic work, we're going to be missing a big gap. So thank you for saying that. And thank you for including the board because, you know, we too need this just as much. So I also want to say, Sherilyn, I could not be more excited about your position and you having the position specifically. And also to recognize that, you know, we made a decision as a board to not use those funds for police officers and to use them for what would be most beneficial for students, and that's you and this role. So I just want to acknowledge that. And I'm turning back over to other people. I know Jackie was about to say something too. So.
Well, Kristen answered part of my question in terms of the adults in the building. And I would like, when this is presented to the board, if that can be highlighted, because the slide, the 4 student indicators, I think it was the 3rd slide that talked about adult professional development and things like that, if we can really kind of hone in on that expectation that it is building wide, and that, you know, as Sherilyn said, the whole idea of it starts when they're walking into the building, you know, and her perspective, I think, is spot on. And and then her response about the grant answered the question about teacher input and, you know, the classroom aspects of some of the measures. I don't know if teachers were a part of the kind of building of this process, but I think that'll be vital in not just buy-in, but perspective for that. And as Francis said, for our students as well. And so this is, my heart started to burst just seeing the kind of reforming of how we're even talking about this and talking about development as opposed to discipline. And so that is, you know, engages, I think, our families and community in a very different way, that it is about expectations of growth as opposed to interventions. So we're starting, you know, really at that level of whole school. One question I do have, and it has to do with, I heard about Umoja and the SEL work. And Linda, you mentioned the, you know, the racial disparities that we have with our interventions, and sometimes with some of the behavior issues. And I'm wondering how our work around racial equity is going to show in this work, because, you know, things like classroom experience with trauma may be around issues of race and bias, whether it's intentional or not. And that was something I didn't hear about. So I was just wondering how that's going to be part of the equation.
Absolutely. Very good question. The preparation that all adults within the building are going to receive has to be sensitive to speaking about race intentionally as we're doing that, because it's going to have to be confronted as bias and prejudice or things come up for that individual, because we are expecting at Tier 1 everyone to be involved. And so there may be instances of things coming up for the adults who are trying to implement this work that they won't know until they're actually trying to do it, because it has to be something they're made aware of. So within the training, we have to make sure that it's intentional, that we speak it and also bring up occasions of it happening and examples so that they're more familiar of recognizing those moments when they're just like, where you have this cluelessness that something has happened, so that you understand what exactly had happened or did happen and how to move forward from that point. And then the Tier 2, one of the things that we noticed as a team is that we function now under a lot of perception of emergency, regardless of data. Like, it's more so, I feel heightened. I feel like this is a Tier 2, Tier 3. And so that's what gets that attention. And what this Tier 2 for us here, in terms of like looking at students, is not going to be based on just how people feel about the student or how the student's presenting. A universal screener is going to identify whether or not that student is presenting as Tier 2. If that student were to come from, say, a teacher nomination and sent through that screener and does not identify as Tier 2, then a discussion would be had with that teacher so that they would understand why the school student is not being accepted into the Tier 2. We're not going to make a student Tier 2 because they've had an interaction with a teacher or an adult in the building that they thought lifted it to that level. So there will be a better identification of what a true need is, and there's going to be more restorative conversations amongst adults in order to identify. So let's talk about what concerns you had, and then let's figure out how we can have some restorative work around repairing relationship, because that doesn't necessarily identify it as Tier 2, and definitely not as Tier 3. So there will be better conversations existing amongst adults so that we can stop misidentifying students as well.
And I appreciate that. And I'm wondering how we can have that as, I didn't see that named in the same way that social, emotional, and trauma informed are named. Mm-hmm. And so the issues that are, you know, related to to race and racial bias or racism. I think if that's the expectation, we're not going to get there if it's assumed that, we'll talk about it or that it's a part of the plan, but it's not named, but that is an expectation as well. This will come up. It's hard. We're going to deal with it. We'll have tools. But I don't see that named in the presentation.
Thank you. We'll definitely look back and see where we can make that more intentional and explicit. Dr. Ammons, you had something you were about to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say that in looking at our care team spaces, that I've had a few conversations with Linda and some of the care team leaders about how we can incorporate that very same sentiment into that care team space to bring out those conversations so we can actuate when we talk about bias and so forth, and providing those examples. That would be a great place to start.
Additionally, in applying for the fellowship for TRIP, I was able to meet with Dr. Ammons, and we were required to include our equity work in our application and how we want to fold that into our trauma-informed work. So part of the strategic planning with University of Chicago will be around folding in equity into the work that we're doing in response to trauma-informed.
So Linda, I have a question. With the grant that DePaul University applied for the CARES coordinator, will that also support the work that you're doing?
It will, and she's speaking of the care coordinator position that D97 also has in the schools. But as opposed to them helping us with our tiered supports as they do in D97, we would only be having the use part-time of one of the care coordinators who would actually partner closely with LaTanya Jackson to make sure that external resources are part of what our families know is available in terms of assistance. So Cheryl Lynn knows about this as well and has been working with LaTanya that we can make sure in cases where students are indicated as having trauma, we have ways of making sure those families have access to that resource as well. Right now, that position is only being looked at as part-time for us because we had more of a robust system with LaTanya Jackson already there with trauma-informed interventionist on campus and our own MTSS in our building growing, that we're splitting that second person with D97. So D97 will have 1.5 persons and we'll have half-time.
Other comments or questions from the committee?
I have a question. And being a community member, I'm not, I haven't been going to school board meetings, but I have been, I did go to the focus groups related to the change in leadership at the school here. And I have my perspective is like, this is what you just talked about is so exciting and fabulous and comprehensive. And every question that people posed, there was such responsiveness to just here in this room. And I just want to say that, and I've been going to some Zooms about the trustee elections, and I don't know where our community is going to land after that. And I don't know how the school decision, where the school board is in terms of picking the next leader of the school. And I just have a lot of anxiety about not getting my hopes up too high, that I want this to work so much. And I can hear myself getting emotional about the anxiety that I feel about where we are as a community, and just hopeful, just putting out my own worry to just say that I hope the community is totally behind this and that it won't become part of a political goofiness. And that whoever the next leader is, has been that part of the interviewing process includes information about this revisioning of the code of conduct. Just the whole language is so totally different. And in the year's time that you've shifted, that all this work has been done is just, it's so exciting and hopeful and shows so much strength in the school community. So anyway, that's just something I needed to share.
Thank you for that feedback. And I will let you know from the team's point of view, I think I would sum it up by saying, for all people, as we hear this and everybody's work within this, the words that come to mind is the courage to submit. So you have to have courage to submit to what's being asked without believing that anyone is trying to cause harm or change, your fundamental beliefs on education. Like, we have children who are depending on us to make a difference in their life, and it not to be predicated on their race. Like they're just depending on it. And every time we don't get it right, that's another opportunity lost. But at the same time, everyone is being a well-meaning adult. And I do appreciate that. And I do respect that. But at some point you have to submit and try and admit you may not have all the answers. And I know we're so well learned and we're so documented and we have so many letters after our names, but we just don't know it all. And so we gotta try different things. We just have to. And so the team that put this together is truly passionate about it. And I'm always the one who has to say, guys, we won't get 100%. There is no 100%. But everyone remembers when you come out the gate trying your best, everybody. And so, I like my email to them after this is over is, well, I could die tonight. As long as it, makes some sense. We gave it our all. We're trying to make a difference. We're going to do the work to make it happen. That's all we have. So everything else, like, I don't know, all we know is we're going to give it our shot. And I do want you all to know that this all started within our locus of control. We're all student service people. So we were like, let's get the people we can get started and done, and then we'll compel the masses. Nell knows that's my favorite word. We're going to compel the masses because you're just going to see it start to work and you're going to be like, well, let's try. Like, what's the worst that can happen? It might work, But that's how we're going to get people on board, and that's how we're going to sell the story. And we still will be growing our committee. So please know that who's here today is not going to be the end. I know we need teachers. We still want student voice. We need that all. We're just a virtual pandemic committee trying our very best to get this ready so that in the fall it is rolling. I see I don't know if I can call on you, Melanie. I see your hand.
Yeah, you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So Linda, I wanted to re-ask before I pose my statement. What's the name of the position again?
Which one?
For the trauma professional.
Trauma-informed interventionist. So that's who Cheryl Lynn is within our school. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, and I'm just being me. We have a school of 3,000 plus students. And you literally just mentioned everything is going to grow. And there's, we feel that one, even to start off is enough to service the entire school.
Oh, man, me, what do I think? As I was interviewing for that, I even put a bug in both Dr. Pruitt-Adams and Mr. Johnson's ear, like, man, if I could get two. I told that to them both. And I told my interview committee, I'm going to say, if I could get two. And they both said, I don't know, Linda, maybe down the line, but do I think it's enough? No. But I don't think I'm ever at a point of satisfaction. I don't know that I would be enough. What I need is people to submit. to understanding we don't have all the answers, and then work with the individuals who are there to try to allow them to make a difference. We're truly who we speak ourselves to be, right? Because we can't say we want all these things, but then stand against the work that would make that happen.
Yeah.
So, and Sherilyn knows this within our discussions that I've like, I know you need other, like she knows that she can ask me for anything because I'm her second person right now. Like whatever we need, like we went through that TREP thing together. I introduced it like that, like, so she's not alone per se. Could we use more? Absolutely. But I know not to be greedy too. I'm thankful and grateful for one too.
Well, I just want to.
Can I add though, Melanie, can I add that was a big part of our conversation at the board.
Thank you.
Our board, we had a big conversation about that because it came up multiple times that one person, we're going to have one person for as large as our school is, like we need to have more. But we were able, in our conversations, what I will say is that what was clear was that we needed to get started and we needed to get at least one. But man, I actually feel like 3 or 4 would be ideal. So
right, that's what I'm thinking about. Whenever we're asking people to go by blind faith, we still want to give ourselves a fighting chance. You know what I mean? And we all, I never want to speak out of turn, but I feel like there is a trend of a lot of us always saying we see the same people coming to the table. We see the same amount of passion in certain people. And if we could only duplicate that, if we can only triplicate that. And so, and then it feels like in this instance, we're hoping that it catches on. And that's not the same fire. You know what I mean? And so to have 3 or 4 Miss Sherilyn's, you're definitely going to make a difference out the gate. So I just wanted to bring that up because, you know, again, we want to be realistic. If we're trying to start something, you know, when you're going to burn a house down, it's not just lighting a match. Like you need some kerosene, you need something that's flammable, like, you know what I mean? So I just wanted to bring attention to that because then, and I also want to be mindful of burnout because as I mentioned at our last meeting, after this pandemic, we're going to see a lot of trauma. We're going to see it, and we need to be prepared with more than just, you know, one able-bodied person. We need a few for this to be successful out the gate. Because I've even talked about how we still don't even have enough counselors, you know, for all the students that we have. So I just want to put that out there. I so much love and appreciate everything that I've heard this evening, but when we don't have enough people to make sure that it's executed properly, then that's when we start to see the bumps and that's when people start wagging their fingers, and that's not something that we need. So I fully support, and I don't know what other way that I can, that we get more people to be a part of this team.
I do want to say though, and your last word is what I was going to focus on. The ladies who are here tonight, stand united with Sherilyn. She is not alone. And through the grant that we're going to get and the training that the team has done for all the staff, the notion is that as we build momentum, as we build capacity, then everyone will have some knowledge, some expertise in trauma-informed response, because we will all be in attune to that. And so it won't be just Sherilyn working in isolation by herself. Yes, she is the starting point. And if we could have 10 or 15, but the presentation tonight was from the team, and they all work together to make sure that this gets done. So I don't want anybody to think this is just all on Sherilyn's shoulder. It's a group effort. And I will say to you that the momentum is building. It is building. And this is going to happen.
And just to piggyback off of Dr. Pruitt-Adams, this is a team. I have found my tribe. Linda is part of my tribe. I just talked with Kristen and Alexis yesterday. Like, I found my tribe. This group has really supported me. And fortunately and unfortunately, many of my past experiences have been in underserved, underfunded communities and schools. And so we've had to be extremely creative. So if nothing else, I'm extremely creative. I've already reached out to UIC. We have potentially 2 interns coming next year to help us roll out a peace room and help us with other trauma. Like, I'm always digging and finding and meeting people and trying. My husband's a social worker, and if he's still working from home, I might have him come and volunteer. So he's downstairs, he didn't hear that. But I'm always trying to scrounge and find, because most of the districts that I've come from, we didn't have. So we just found, and I'm a strong believer of, we have everything that we need. Everything that we need is already here in Oak Park. We just have to pull it out of people. And so the teachers that I reached out to, they had to agree to even be a part of the application. And many of them were ecstatic to, yes, I'm ready. I want to, like, they couldn't send me their resumes quick enough to join. And there were teachers who wanted to join, but have other commitments, but they're like, next year I'm there, even if I'm not on the team, like, fold me in. So there is definitely a fire lit, and I'm building the tribe. So we'll be okay. And hopefully if we can show that we can do this, then someone will hit the Powerball and, you know, make it rain on the trauma-informed care team, and we'll be able to hire some more people.
I think too, the one thing, thank you so much, Cheryl. And I want to thank the team too, Linda and Janelle. I don't want to leave Janelle out of this because she didn't present tonight, but I know Janelle has a lot to do with this. And I just wanted to say that when we were asking at the board about how was one person going to do this, there was an insistence by the administration that this was going to be a group effort and that the system was going to change because other people had to be involved in it. And when I said I was so excited to see this report tonight, the excitement was because what they said was going to happen is what I'm seeing here tonight, was a team of people working together, and it not so that hopefully, and I don't know, I still have a fear of, you know, that stretch too thin, be burnt out thing too. I have that fear a little bit for you. But what I'm hoping is that by seeing how this team has developed what's been developed, that alleviates some of that, and that we do continue to build on it. So I'm like almost emotional. I'm so excited at what's possible with that and the difference in this and what we heard tonight compared to what we've heard before. So I just, you know, but like this is definitely a shift. Before we were still hearing, or at least I was still hearing, I will just speak from my own I statement. I was still hearing like more of the punitive piece, but I'm not, there's a shift here, and I'm just really grateful for it. And so thank you all. I wanted to see if there were anything that the students wanted to add, because what I'm imagining in my head right now is that this has been a very adult-based process that may not have filtered to the students yet because of the transition time that takes. But I would like to hear from the students if they had anything to add about their thoughts on what they've heard or what they may have experienced so far. Not, you know, I always say, I don't want to put you all on the spot, students, but really, I do want to put you on the spot because that's what we're so thrilled to have you and your voice in this space. So Chase or Kyla or Quincy, if you have anything to add.
I'll say I'm really excited with some of the things that I've heard today. I think this is something that was definitely necessary. I wish it was implemented, you know, well, I'm a senior, so I wish it was implemented earlier, but I think that this is going to help a lot of students, and I'm rooting for the success because I think once you add more people to this program, it's just going to become even more ingrained into the schools doing.
I'd like to say that I was really happy to actually see the statistics and see the numbers in the presentation, because like I felt like, you know, personally it was just kind of assumptions, just like, oh, you know, I think like from what I know or what I've seen, like a third of the students feel this way, or you know, half the students feel this way. But now I got to actually see it. Like someone actually, you know, did the surveys and I got to actually see it. And you know, similar to Kyla, and the same to Kyla. I am a senior, and so, I wish that I like get to see the, plans and everything that we have going on, see it implemented, see it in the school, and like see the results and see what worked and what didn't work. But at the same time, I'm really happy that I got to be a part of the process, and I'm really happy that I got to see the results, even though I wouldn't be able to experience it, So, I mean, I'm really grateful for it. I really liked what I saw today. I was really happy. And I'm really glad that we're starting to make progress. That's what we're here for.
Thank you, Quincy.
Thank you so much, Quincy.
Yeah, I'm also a senior, so I won't get to see this implemented either, but I'm excited that the ball has been rolling and that there's a fire being lit, and that that future students will have this resource to use whenever they feel like they need to. And I'm glad that I'm seeing the fire being lit and I'm seeing the work that's going into it, because I think it will be a really great program in the future.
Thank you, Chase. And to Chase, Quincy, and Kyla, I would like, from your experiences as seniors in advisory as it's been rolled out this semester, second semester, while we've been in hybrid, I hope you've been hearing or seeing some of this resonating in there too, in terms of difference between last year to this year, and that you're seeing a little bit of that, building the capacity within our teachers and the student through them with the programming that you've been seeing. That's my hope.
The researcher in me wants, Linda, your hope to be, as Quincy was saying, let's see the data, because that's so helpful. Yeah. And as we have our students here, if there is a way to ask them directly, what has been the experience, to see if, if things are resonating, if things are taking hold, and if not, then what needs to be done. And as you all are going to make me cry, because first of all, you're seniors, and just the maturity of it didn't happen for me, but I'm glad I get to see it. So I'm going to stop talking because you are going to make me cry.
Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, I agree. Any other comments from the group? Anyone else want to? Go ahead, Melanie.
Just real quick, I wanted to mention, I wanted to call attention to, Susan, what you were saying earlier, and how we're seeing our community play out lately. The only anecdote I can think of is in my era, we got spankings with belts for doing wrong. And when you get spanked with the belt, it hurts really, really bad. You cry really, really hard. And you wait for the pain to go away. And the hope from the parent is that you learned your lesson and that you have the next day to be better. And then somebody reminds you of what you did and that you got whooped, and they won't let you let it go. And I would just say, because we are live on YouTube, anyone in the community can view this. I feel like, the school has gotten whooped. It's gotten whooped. And you have a larger group of support on the inside than before. Allow the school to feel the hurt, to make its amends, to be better, and start to promote, yes, the school is moving in a better direction, instead of, well, that would have been great if my kid was there, or now they're doing that, or I never seen them doing that before, or now. And because the same amount of negativity we can put out in the community on social media, we can do the same thing in being positive, and we can use that energy to move things along a lot faster and make our students feel happier about the institution that they go to and will graduate from one day.
Thank you, Melanie. You could have, our meeting could not have been wrapped up any better tonight. Thank you all so much. this committee really, and the work that everyone is doing, just so very appreciated. And we do get to have a say in what it sounds like in our community. We're not without voice. So like Melanie said, let's use it wisely. Thank you all. We need a motion to adjourn. See, Gail, I remembered.
So moved.
Who was that?
It was Jacqueline Moore.
Thank you.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Thank you all so much. Thank you, committee.
Good night,
Thank you.
everyone. Be safe.
Thank you.